The year was 1853, and the Italian countryside shimmered under a late spring sun, but there was a chill in the air that no warmth could dispel. Travelers spoke in hushed tones of the Villa di Nerovelo, perched atop the cliffs near the Ligurian coast. Its walls, blackened by centuries of storms and ivy, seemed alive, breathing with the wind that swept the sea below. Giovanni Moretti, a young historian from Florence, had come at the request of an old friend, eager to document the villa and the lineage of its current occupant, the enigmatic Duchess of the Black Veil. Rumors clung to her like shadows, that she never removed the sable fabric that covered her face, that she wandered the halls alone at night, and that those who gazed too long upon her vanished into madness. Giovanni arrived at dusk, his carriage rattling along the uneven cobblestones leading to the villa. The gates, wrought iron twisted into grotesque shapes, groaned as they opened. Beyond them, the gravel path climbed steeply, flanked by overgrown gardens where roses had wilted long ago. And statues with faces worn smooth by time watched him with frozen contempt. The entrance hall was vast, filled with dust and the faint scent of decayed perfume. A solitary chandelier swayed, though no wind penetrated this far into the house. A faint sound echoed, a whisper or perhaps the creak of old wood settling. Giovanni shivered. A voice called from the shadows. "You have come at last." From the darkness emerged a figure clad entirely in black, her veil descending in folds to the floor. Only the faintest outline of her eyes could be discerned. She moved silently, her presence filling the room with a weight that made Giovanni's chest tighten. "I am the Duchess," she said, her voice melodic yet hollow, echoing as if from a distant corridor. "You wish to know my history? You shall know it. But some stories are not told lightly." As the doors closed behind him, cutting off the last light of day, Giovanni felt the chill of the villa sink into his bones. He realized almost immediately that he had crossed a threshold not only of stone and wood, but of reason itself. The Duchess led him through corridors lined with faded portraits. The faces of her ancestors seemed to watch him, their eyes gleaming faintly in the dim candlelight. "All who dwell here are bound by the veil," she whispered. "Not all survive its weight." When Giovanni asked what she meant, she simply turned her head and continued walking. In the grand salon, a hearth glowed faintly, though the fire appeared to burn without wood. Shadows danced across the walls as the wind outside began to moan. "Sit," she commanded. A chair creaked beneath him. "History is not merely names and dates. It is memory. And memory is a dangerous thing here. Ask what you will and you will see, but beware what you awaken." Giovanni, notebook in hand, felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with dread. This was no ordinary assignment. Already he felt the villa watching him, measuring him. And somewhere in the distance, behind a door he could not see, a faint sobbing began, almost like the sigh of someone who had waited too long. The Duchess's veil shifted as she gazed at him. "Tonight," she said, "you shall meet the first of many truths. But remember, not all truths are yours to keep." Outside, the night thickened, pressing against the walls. Within, the villa seemed alive, breathing with secrets that had lingered for centuries, waiting for someone brave, kind or foolish, enough to uncover them. And so Giovanni's descent into the shadows of the Villa di Nerovelo began, step by step, room by room, guided by a lady who was both a mystery and a warning. Night had fully claimed the villa. The wind rattled the shuttered windows, carrying with it the faint brine of the Ligurian sea. Giovanni could hardly tell whether it was the sound of the storm outside or the villa itself groaning under the weight of centuries. Every step he took on the worn marble floors echoed ominously, bouncing off walls lined with portraits whose painted eyes seemed to shimmer in the flickering candlelight. The Duchess guided him through a narrow corridor, lined with doors that had been locked for decades. "Each room," she said, her voice low and melodic, "holds a memory, not of the living, but of those who could not leave. Few visitors have walked these halls and returned without change." Giovanni felt a shiver creep down his spine. "Change in what way?" he asked. She paused, letting her veil brush the floor. "In ways you cannot yet imagine. The villa remembers, Giovanni, and it demands remembrance in return." They stopped before a massive oak door, its surface carved with strange sigils and worn family crests. The Duchess lifted a key from the folds of her gown and inserted it into the lock. The door groaned open, revealing a library that stretched higher than the eye could see. Shelves were stacked with ancient tomes, leather-bound manuscripts and bundles of yellowed letters tied with black ribbons. The air smelled of dust, ink, and faintly of iron. "This room," she whispered, "is where the history of my family and the curse is kept." Giovanni stepped inside, eyes wide. "A curse?" The Duchess nodded. "For generations, the women of my line have worn the black veil. Not for mourning alone. It conceals what they have witnessed, what they have endured, and what they may yet inflict. The veil binds the sorrow and the secret, and it passes from mother to daughter. Many have gone mad under its weight. Some disappear entirely," he shivered. "And you?" "I am the last of my line who can bear it willingly," she said, her tone steady yet brittle. "But the villa, it hungers. It hungers for memory, for witness, for acknowledgement. It is alive, Giovanni. And you are now a part of it." She handed him a small bundle of letters. Giovanni unfolded the first one, careful not to tear the brittle paper. The handwriting was elegant but strained. The ink faded in patches. Each letter described events of despair, strange disappearances, and nights when the walls themselves seemed to weep. One letter recounted how a young maid had vanished, her screams carried away by the wind before anyone could intervene. Another described a noblewoman whose veil had been torn away, leaving her to stare at the sunlit halls and go mad. Giovanni felt a tightness in his chest. "Why have you kept this hidden?" he asked. "Because knowledge," the Duchess said, "is a burden. And yet someone must bear it, so the villa does not consume all memory unheeded." As he read, a sudden draught swept through the library, scattering papers like dark leaves. The candles flickered, and Giovanni swore he saw for a moment the figure of a woman in a black veil gliding among the stacks. He blinked and she was gone. "You see her," the Duchess said softly. "Do not fear. The villa tests those who enter. It measures your fear, your attention, your courage. Some fail, some it allows to leave." A distant sound caught Giovanni's ear, the faint echo of laughter too delicate to be of the present. It rose from somewhere below, where the foundations of the villa met the cliffs. "Do you hear it?" he asked. She nodded. "That is the laughter of those who cannot leave. They are not alive, yet they are not entirely dead. They wander, watching, waiting. Occasionally they call to the living. The villa answers, and the veil shifts accordingly." Giovanni shivered. "And if it calls to me, then you must listen carefully," she replied. "But do not look too long. To look too long is to join them." Hours passed. Giovanni explored the library under the Duchess's guidance, examining journals, maps, and painted portraits. Many of the paintings were of women in black veils, their faces pale and eyes haunting. He noticed subtle changes as he moved from painting to painting. The eyes seemed to follow him, the mouths twitching as if forming unspoken words. When the night deepened, the Duchess led him to a spiral staircase descending beneath the villa. "Here lies the crypt of the Black Veil," she said. "No one enters willingly. Many have gone to the lower chambers and never returned. What is kept here is not merely the remains of the dead, but their regrets, their anguish, their witness to what the veil has demanded." Giovanni's curiosity outweighed his fear. "I must see it," he said. The Duchess studied him silently. Finally she nodded. "Then you must take heed. The villa may grant your sight, but your mind may not return unscathed." The staircase led them to a subterranean hall, the walls slick with damp, the air thick and suffocating. Torches flickered in sconces, throwing shadows that moved like living things. At the center of the chamber was a stone altar, stained dark, though no fire had ever touched it. Around it, figures in black veils were faintly visible, as if trapped behind a thin veil of mist. Their faces were obscured, yet Giovanni felt their eyes upon him. One figure moved closer. Giovanni's heart pounded. The Duchess whispered, "They are the predecessors. Their sorrow and vigilance bind the villa. Respect their silence." Suddenly the figures stepped back as if receding from something he could not see. From the shadows emerged a faint sound, a voice delicate, a woman whispering his name. "Giovanni." He turned to the Duchess. "Who is that?" "The villa," she said simply. "It calls your name. It has judged you and it watches how you answer." The whispers grew, multiplying into a chorus. The air thickened with the scent of old flowers, decay, and whetstone. Giovanni realized he was trembling. Each word he heard seemed etched directly into his mind, bypassing his ears. The Duchess placed a gloved hand on his shoulder. "You are no longer merely a visitor," she said. "You are a witness. What you see, what you hear, will haunt you. But only if you fear it, only if you let the veil touch your mind." As he descended further into the crypt, Giovanni understood the truth. The villa itself was alive, conscious, a sentient memory of generations of sorrow. The black veil was not just fabric. It was a symbol of all the darkness, grief, and secrecy the house had hoarded over centuries. And now Giovanni had stepped inside, bound by curiosity and the unspoken promise of revelation. In the faint torchlight, the walls began to shift. Shadows converged into shapes, and for the first time, Giovanni glimpsed the full horror of the villa, not merely in its architecture, but in the memory it had stored, the sorrow it had absorbed, and the whispers that would follow him long after he left. Giovanni's sleep that night was fitful, haunted by the echoes of the subterranean hall. Even with the shutters tightly drawn and the wind outside muted, he felt the villa pressing on him from all sides, as if the walls themselves remembered his every movement. In his dreams, veiled figures drifted through endless corridors, their whispered names intertwining with the sound of dripping water and the moan of the sea below. He awoke to a dim grey dawn. The villa was silent now, yet the memory of the whispers lingered. In the breakfast hall, the Duchess awaited, a cup of bitter coffee in hand. Her veil, as always, concealed her expression entirely. "You look as if the night has aged you," she said softly. I heard things," Giovanni admitted, hesitating. "Figures." Whispering. "That is the villa speaking to you," she replied. "Do not fear what it says, but what it sees in you. Each visitor leaves a part of themselves behind, consciously or not, and the villa keeps it all." Giovanni shuddered. The thought that the house could absorb his essence unsettled him deeply. Yet curiosity prevailed. He asked, "Why me? Why now?" "The villa senses those it deems worthy," she said. "I am but its custodian. It has waited for someone who can perceive its depth, someone who can document, understand, perhaps even survive." Their morning passed in a cautious silence. Giovanni examined the letters, manuscripts, and journals of the villa's long-deceased inhabitants. One entry described the original Duchess, a woman of tragic beauty, who had veiled herself after a family scandal. Another recounted nights when servants went missing, the household staff too terrified to speak of the vanished. Giovanni's pen recorded every detail, but the deeper he read, the more he sensed the villa reaching into his mind, guiding his thoughts, shaping his perception. By mid-afternoon, he could no longer ignore the subtle changes in the villa. Doors he had passed earlier now seemed longer, hallways narrower and shadows thicker. The air smelled faintly of wet earth and burned wax. From the corner of his eye he glimpsed movement, a figure retreating into a darkened room, black fabric trailing like smoke. "Do you see them?" he asked. The Duchess's voice was near, yet it seemed to come from every direction. "You see what the villa allows you to see. Each step closer, each question asked, draws the truth nearer, and sometimes it is too much to bear." Giovanni felt a cold dread as he followed her into a previously unexplored wing. The walls here were lined with portraits, more lifelike than any he had seen, their eyes glistening with tears that never dried. Faces of women, all wearing black veils, stared at him with an intensity that made his chest tighten. Some seemed to whisper his name, others appeared to mouth silent warnings. At the end of the hall they came upon a door carved with intricate designs, depicting hands reaching outward from the stone, as if begging for release. The Duchess paused. "Beyond this door lies the chamber of reflection. Few enter willingly, fewer leave unchanged. This is where the villa's memory is clearest, its sorrow most potent." Giovanni hesitated. "What will I see?" "That depends on what you carry inside yourself," she said. "The villa does not lie, it merely reveals." With a heavy turn of the key, the door opened. Giovanni felt a rush of cold air carrying whispers, laughter, and the faint scent of decay. The chamber beyond was circular, lined with mirrors that reached from floor to vaulted ceiling. The reflection of the villa stretched infinitely, each surface showing another version of the hallways, corridors, and the figures within. Some mirrors reflected scenes from centuries past. Others displayed events that had yet to occur. As Giovanni stepped in, he realized the mirrors were not entirely reflective. Within each pane, shadowy figures drifted, veiled and silent, their faces pale and hollow. They turned toward him, raising hands as if to reach out. His heartbeat quickened. "You must focus," the Duchess instructed, her voice calm amid the chaos. "The mirrors will tempt you. They will show you desires, fears, and regrets. Some cannot endure it. Remember, not all truths are yours to carry." Giovanni approached a mirror nearest him. At first he saw only his reflection, pale and tense. Slowly the glass shifted. Behind him appeared a room he did not recognize, a small chamber filled with the soft glow of candlelight. And there, seated in a chair, was a woman in black, her face hidden beneath the veil. She held a book in her hands and turned its pages deliberately, almost as if she knew he was watching. He tried to look away, but the glass seemed to anchor his gaze. Their voice, soft and melodic, whispered from behind the veil. "Why do you linger, historian?" I seek the truth," Giovanni stammered. "The truth," she replied, "is heavier than you imagine. It is not always to be read or recorded. Some truths consume the bearer." The chamber's air thickened. Giovanni's own reflection in other mirrors began to warp, stretching into impossible angles, a grotesque version of himself with hollow eyes and a twisted mouth. The whispers intensified, layering over each other until he could not discern their meaning. Panic rose. He turned to the Duchess, but she too was multiplied infinitely in the mirrors, her form flickering between reality and reflection. "You must face it," she said. "The villa knows what lies in your heart. Only by acknowledgement can you move forward." Giovanni's gaze returned to the veiled woman in the mirror. Her hands lifted the book toward him. He could not read the words, yet a flood of images entered his mind, scenes of past duchesses, of servants vanished into darkness, of nights where the villa itself seemed to weep. Each memory carried sorrow and terror, yet none bore anger. Only expectation, only observation, and then he understood. The villa did not seek to harm, not in the conventional sense. It demanded witness. It demanded acknowledgement. To survive, one must see clearly, accept the weight, and record it faithfully. Trembling, Giovanni took out his notebook. He began to write, his hand moving almost of its own accord, capturing each detail the mirrors revealed. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the murmuring of unseen figures and the occasional sigh of the veil. When he finally lifted his head, the chamber appeared still. The mirrors reflected the empty hall once more, the veiled woman gone. Giovanni's hands ached, his eyes stung from the strain of witnessing so much. Yet he felt a grim satisfaction. He had endured the first test of the villa. He had seen what most never would. The Duchess's hand rested lightly on his shoulder. "You have taken your first step," she said, "but there are still corridors untraveled, rooms unopened, and truths yet buried. The villa's memory is long, its patience infinite, and its hunger unending." Giovanni realized that he had only begun to understand the villa, and that the night's shadows were only the first layer of what he would face. Each reflection, each whisper, each step would pull him further into the slow, unrelenting horror that the black veil had cultivated for centuries. The villa's corridors seemed longer than ever, twisting in ways that defied Giovanni's memory. Daylight, when it existed, filtered through tall, narrow windows in fractured beams, casting sharp angles that cut the floor into irregular patches of light and shadow. Every step he took felt measured, as though the villa itself counted his movements, storing them in some invisible ledger of observation. The Duchess led him through a series of rooms that had remained locked since the last century. Each contained remnants of lives long extinguished, chairs turned askew, faded draperies clinging to the walls, and personal items coated in dust. A child's shoe, a silver locket, a bundle of hair tied with a black ribbon. Every object suggested someone had vanished without explanation. "They were taken by the villa," the Duchess said, her voice quiet but firm. "Not out of malice, but necessity. It feeds on the stories of those who dwell here, on memory and witness. The veil is not merely cloth. It is the vessel through which these stories flow. Some endure, some fade. None leave unchanged." Giovanni's curiosity bordered on obsession. Each object he touched seemed to echo with a life of its own. A faint whisper accompanied his fingers as they brushed across a desk, the name of a vanished maid slipping into his mind. The villa's presence felt heavier than ever, pressing on his chest, seeping into his thoughts. In one chamber, he found a series of portraits of the duchesses who had come before the current occupant. Each wore a black veil, though the style varied with the era. Their painted eyes appeared alive, glinting faintly in the dim light, and their expressions were uniformly somber. One, painted in oils of exquisite depth, seemed to shift whenever Giovanni glanced away. A tear glistened perpetually on the painted cheek. "Do you see it?" the Duchess asked, her voice almost lost in the chill of the room. "Yes," Giovanni whispered. "It's watching me." "The villa never forgets," she said, "and it measures. It remembers those who falter and those who persist. The duchesses, you see, they bore the weight of the veil fully. Some went mad, some vanished. Some remained, but only in part." A sudden, distant sound startled him, a child's laughter, faint and hollow, echoing through the walls. Giovanni froze, every nerve on edge. The Duchess did not flinch. "They call to those who can see them," she explained. "The vanished are not lost. They are witnesses in another form. They linger where the veil binds them, sometimes guiding, sometimes warning." Hours passed as Giovanni explored, documenting what he could. The villa seemed alive, adjusting to his presence, guiding him towards certain objects, certain rooms. The air grew colder, damp, smelling faintly of wet stone and decayed flowers. Shadows began to lengthen unnaturally, stretching along the walls and converging in corners where no light reached. By late afternoon, the Duchess led him to a small hidden chamber beneath the grand staircase. The room was low-ceilinged and lined with shelves containing leather-bound journals and piles of letters, each carefully stacked and labeled in meticulous handwriting. Many of the entries described sorrow and madness, nights of weeping, vanished servants, and the overwhelming presence of the veil. Giovanni picked up a journal, its cover worn but intact. The entries inside told the story of a duchess from decades past who had sought to remove the veil and flee the villa. Her words chronicled fear, isolation, and visions of figures in black who watched her constantly. She wrote of whispers from the walls, of shadows that lengthened when she turned her back, and of an inexorable pull toward the crypt beneath the house. Her final entry was barely legible. "The veil does not forgive. It does not forget. It hungers. I see its eyes in every reflection. I hear its voice in every breath. I am bound. And I fear the next visitor will see me as I see them." Giovanni shivered. The villa seemed to pulse with a rhythm in tune with his own heartbeat, as though aware that he had read the words. He felt the weight of centuries pressing down upon him, and an instinctive fear gnawed at the edges of his mind. A faint sound drew him to the door at the far end of the chamber. It opened into a hallway that he had not seen before, its walls lined with portraits of women in black veils, their eyes glistening with tears. As he stepped forward, he realized that one of the figures, a duchess from the late 18th century, was not painted but reflected his own form in the glass. He recoiled, stumbling backward, and the door slammed shut behind him. The chamber seemed to shrink, the shadows converging. Whispering filled the air, voices layering upon each other. Giovanni recognized the name of the vanished maid, of the duchess who had attempted to flee, and of countless others who had vanished into the villa's memory. The whispers seemed to speak directly into his mind, conveying not words but the weight of their experiences. He cried out, and the duchess appeared silently beside him. "You have seen only a fragment," she said. "The villa is patient, Giovanni. It does not demand immediate understanding, only endurance." "Endurance of what?" he asked, voice trembling. "The knowledge that nothing here is ever truly lost," she said. "Each sorrow, each fear, each despair is preserved, and those who witness it are forever changed. Some embrace it, some cannot return." Giovanni felt a creeping vertigo. The portraits shifted subtly, the eyes following him, the veils moving as if in a breeze he could not feel. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, exhaling the faint scent of decay and old perfume. "Do you understand?" the Duchess asked softly. "Yes," he whispered. "I understand. I think." "Good," she said. "Tomorrow you will see more. But remember, the villa is not merely a house. It is a vessel of memory and grief. And the veil. The veil binds everything it touches." Giovanni could hardly sleep that night. Every shadow in his room seemed alive, and the faint sound of crying echoed beneath the floorboards. The veil, though absent from his own eyes, seemed to linger in the corners, a presence felt rather than seen. By dawn, he resolved to explore further, knowing that the villa would reveal its deeper horrors to those who dared to see. The black veil, the Duchess whispered in his mind, was not merely a garment. It was a legacy, a prison, a witness to centuries of sorrow. And Giovanni had stepped willingly into its embrace. The following evening, the villa seemed to pulse with an almost sentient rhythm. Every step Giovanni took echoed in the halls like a drumbeat marking his inevitability. He felt as though the very stones of the Villa di Nerovelo were aware of him, observing, calculating, waiting for him to stumble or falter. The wind outside screamed against the cliffs, carrying a scent of salt, damp earth, and the faintly acrid tang of smoke. The Duchess led him through the labyrinthine corridors toward the crypt beneath the villa, the air growing colder with each step. Torches flickered in sconces, casting shadows that writhed like living things. Giovanni could feel the presence of the vanished, figures in black veils shifting just beyond the corners of his vision, whispering his name. "Tonight," the Duchess said, her voice a calm tether in the storm of sensation, "you will see the villa as it truly is. You will confront the legacy of the black veil, the memory it keeps, and the truth it demands of those who enter its halls." Giovanni's heart pounded as they descended. The stone staircase wound downward into darkness, slick with moisture, the air thick with the scent of decay and old perfume. The whispers grew louder, layering upon each other, merging into a chorus of sorrow, warning, and longing. Some voices were familiar. The vanished maid, the Duchess who had fled. Others he had only glimpsed in portraits. At the bottom they entered a vast chamber. The walls were lined with mirrors, each reflecting not only the present but the past, the future, and the possibilities that might never come to be. In the center of the room was a stone altar, stained dark though it bore no trace of fire. The air shimmered with an unnatural heat, a pulse of energy that made Giovanni's skin prickle. "Here," the Duchess said, stepping forward, "lies the heart of the villa, the memory of every soul it has ever claimed, and every witness it has ever drawn in. To touch it is to understand everything." But at a price. Giovanni approached the altar. Etched into the stone were countless names, some legible, some worn away by centuries. Beneath the names he saw faint outlines of figures, veiled, pale, trapped in the marble itself. He recognized some, the maid, the duchesses, the vanished servants. His own name appeared faintly, as though the villa had anticipated his arrival. A sudden motion caught his eye. In the reflection of the nearest mirror, the Duchess appeared behind him, her veil lifted just slightly. Giovanni froze. He could see the faintest glimpse of sorrow etched into her features. Her eyes dark pools that reflected not only the villa, but the centuries of grief it had collected. "You have endured," she said, "but now you must decide. Will you leave carrying only memory, or will you remain becoming part of the villa, part of the black veil?" Giovanni felt a pull, subtle but irresistible. The villa whispered to him, showing him visions of its past, the clandestine meetings of the duchesses, the vanished servants, the sorrow and anguish bound into the very walls. He saw himself reflected in the mirrors, multiplied infinitely, veiled and unrecognizable, a witness to endless centuries of sorrow. He began, his voice shaking. "Do not hesitate," the Duchess said. "The villa does not force. It only offers truth and the choice to bear it." In that moment, Giovanni felt a terror unlike any before. To remain was to surrender himself to the villa, to be woven into the tapestry of grief and memory. To leave meant carrying the weight of what he had seen, a burden that would haunt him forever. A sudden sound drew his attention, faint sobbing from one of the mirrors. He turned to see a young maid, veiled and pale, trapped behind the glass. Her eyes pleaded for recognition, for release. Giovanni realized then that the villa did not merely store memory. It demanded acknowledgement. Every soul, every sorrow, every grief needed to be witnessed, or it would remain bound, endlessly repeating. He closed his eyes, took a steadying breath, and began to speak the names he had learned, recounting each story, each tragedy, each whisper. His voice echoed through the chamber, growing in strength, weaving together the threads of sorrow and history. The mirrors shimmered, the stone pulsed beneath his feet, and the veiled figures trembled as though feeling the weight of their stories finally acknowledged. The villa responded. Shadows receded, the air lightened slightly, and the figure of the Duchess drew closer, her veil lifting fully now. Giovanni saw her face in full for the first time, pale, haunted, yet strangely serene. "You have done what few could," she said softly. "You have seen, remembered, and borne witness, and in doing so you have earned passage." A sudden warmth spread through the chamber. The mirrors reflected only Giovanni and the Duchess, no longer veiled figures or shadows. The whispers had faded to a faint hum, as though the villa itself exhaled, content for the first time in centuries. "Oh, you may leave," she said, "and the villa will release you. But remember, some part of you will remain, as all witnesses leave behind a trace. You carry a thread of memory now, woven into the black veil." Giovanni felt a strange calm as he ascended the staircase, the villa's oppressive weight lifting slightly with each step. When he emerged into the moonlit gardens, the wind had died down, leaving only the soft murmur of the sea. He looked back at the villa, its towers dark and silent, and understood that he had survived but not unmarked. The Duchess watched him from a high balcony, her black veil restored, flowing like shadows in the moonlight. Giovanni bowed, feeling gratitude, fear, and awe in equal measure. Years later, he would write the chronicles of the villa, careful to preserve its secrets while documenting its history. Yet he would never forget the whispers, the mirrors, and the veiled eyes. Sometimes, when alone in his study, he would feel a faint brush of fabric at the nape of his neck and hear a soft voice whisper, "Remember, always remember." The villa, perched on the cliffs above the Ligurian Sea, remained, silent, patient, and ever watchful. And the black veil continued to weave its sorrow, claiming witnesses who dared to look too long, listen too closely, or linger in its shadow. And so the legacy of the Duchess of the Black Veil endured, a slow, insidious haunting of memory, grief, and unending observation, a story told not in screams but in the quiet, creeping terror of what one sees when the veil falls,